This just came into my head a few moments ago, so for those of you who think I don't have enough, sit down. For those of you who don't think I have a filtered moment and that I can't keep a few things in, I can tell you right now I keep a lot in. It's all relative. Well, I couldn't sleep last night, and you know how you channel surf? I channel surf and then fall asleep. But anyway, at about 4 o'clock this morning, I woke up with this really fun dream. Shall I share? For some reason, Pope Francis was in San Francisco, and I was there in the middle of, I got my ticket to be front and center, and there was a little cocktail party, a reception. And I told them there was a few Argentinians come to our church recently. That happens to be true. And then I said to him, if we go really quickly, they're about to begin Mass over at St. Columba, and it would really be kind of fun if you popped in. And he said, well, just for a minute. So I got my little 2007 Mustang and flew across the bridge, got here and snuck in, and then there was a party, and he didn't leave for a couple of hours and missed his flight back to Rome. I said, sure, you'll get the next one. And then I woke up. So what do you think that means? Anybody got any ideas about what that might mean? What, I'm delusional? Well, that could be too. That could be too. What? Oh, okay, do you hear that? Maybe we should send an invitation to him for the next time he's in the hood just to stop by. Well, we've sent him letters and he hasn't responded. That's a dream, sisters, not for real. Don't go out and tell. That's how trouble starts. So what do you think these readings are about today? Oh, you're all not very quick on that one. What do you think these readings are about today? Anybody got any ideas? You read one, so the coming of the Lord, yeah, that's a bit obvious. Yes. Mary Magdalene isn't even in the story, sister. Mary's the mother of God. Mary Magdalene is the other lady. Yeah, Living out the will of God in our bodies. Have you got any ideas? No. The relationship with John and Jesus, very good. This is Herman. He's applying for the job here at St. Columba's music department. I had to go get him to bring him into church with the choir already. So Herman, being a good Baptist, do you have at least one thing to say about these readings?
The readings?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
The readings, Jesus Christ was born.
Oh, Lord. Okay, that's all you got. Okay. He hasn't been born to Tuesday.
Well.
Oh, okay. Enthusiastic parishioners, full active participation. Okay, then. Actually, these two are a little dangerous, to be truthful. Yes. To trust God. Oh, to be open to God, to trust God and to be open to God's yes. You see, the first reading tells us something very powerful. In the book of Micah, what Micah is communicating to the people of Israel is restoration. They are now been thrown out and in exile. They've been in Babylon, they've been in, and now they've been up and down, they've been destroyed, and yet restoration for them. Restoration means going back to Jerusalem, back to the temple, and celebrating again. And part of that restoration is the Messiah. And as you know, the people of Israel, the Jewish people, are still waiting on the Messiah. In our tradition, we understand that Jesus Christ has already come. Amen?
Amen.
Jesus Christ has already come, and for each and every person who's baptized into the death and the resurrection of Jesus, Jesus Christ is already in our lives. It's permeated into our sinews, it's in our DNA, it's in the very essence of who we are, and sometimes we forget. So which comes first, Easter or Christmas?
Christmas.
Oh, okay. Sister, Could you just not lead the congregation just because I know you're right? Well, her too, she's on staff, but they are right. Christmas comes after Easter. Christmas comes after Easter. Now, Father Kwame took us that in a homily a couple of years ago, or maybe it was Maurice Nutt, because the whole idea of Luke is 30, 40, 50 years in the Synoptic Gospels, they are trying to remember what this Jesus event was. The incarnation is an invitation for us to look into our lives and be incarnational in our living. And what Joyce said was our yes. The Blessed Mother, as a 14-year-old girl, said yes. Do you really think she understood what that yes meant? Thank God you're all saying no. If somebody had said yes and dropped to their knees and said the rosary, it'd be like me in Belfast one time when I was a seminarian and went to somebody's house, and the little woman I went to bless, bring communion, and she says, "Oh, Father, my family's very good. I taught them all to say the rosary, just like Our Lady taught Jesus." Think about that, people, for a moment. The rosary didn't come from another 1,000 years. Jesus would never have heard that prayer at that moment in time. It would be silly in that context. The understanding is that we are invited to a personal yes. We are invited in our humanity to yes. Each and every one of us have our own distinctive celebration of 99.999% of our DNA that is similar and also similar to everything else in creation. But that little percentage that makes us different, makes us unique, makes us special, makes us powerful in the mind of God, that we're just like the Blessed Mother. We're invited to take that journey. Now, do you really think that this all really happened the way it happened, the way it was said right here? Please say no, Father. Did it really happen that way? Do you think a 14-year-old pregnant girl was going to walk through the 80 miles down the road on her own in a society that women had no agency, did not exist, wouldn't have gone on her own, wasn't traveling 80 miles, it would have taken her a week to walk on her own? That didn't happen. But that's not the point. The point is the Lucan community wanted to understand, wanted to theologize, wanted to contemplate what this meeting of between the old dispensation, because Elizabeth represents the priestly class, and John the prophetic, and Mary the new dispensation. What she carried within her in pregnancy was the gift of our incarnation. It's not necessarily Jesus' incarnation. We are incarnational when we leave. In fact, we do a terrible job by thinking that's all holy and that's over there. Jesus grew inside his mommy's tumb in her womb just like all of us did. He came down the birth canal just like most of us did. And if you think about it in that context, pregnancy must have been a terrible thing in many ways, and the thought of it for women in those days. How many of you have had babies in your lives or where pregnancy has been run? Just think about it. Anybody who's a lot, yeah, you can put up your hands. It's okay. It's all good. Those moments, can you imagine how terrified you must have been when that first happened? The joy of it and the being frightened. And then imagine being in a society where you had no participation in it. Because up until 150 years ago, the man was all responsible. The seed went into the woman, and it was all there. The baby just had to grow. You were just a little field to cultivate things. And women were of little value. In that context, can you imagine how it must have felt to be pregnant and not married, and then you're heading off down the road 80 miles away? The context of the spirituality that Luke is inviting us into is it is a fermentation, a contemplation, an invitation to prayer. And that has to be done in our ordinary humanity, just like God made you. And every single yes is a yes to you. No one else can say that yes but you. No one in the history of creation could have said that yes, and no one else will ever be able to say that yes, even if they come up with cloning of you. It's never going to happen because you are such an irreplaceable gift of God's love, and you're invited into that situation to love God the best that you can. So it's a free will gift of your own humanity. And in that invitation, you're invited to embrace your humanity, to embrace your love, however it is that you have come to this world. Tall, short, black, white, gay, straight, up, down, fat, thin, the whole thing. You have been given a gift of life, and you are irreplaceable, and you are invited to say yes. Amen? And in our Christianity, too, we're invited to say yes in that context. Because Jesus is the fulfillment, the incarnation. He was fully human and fully God and fully alive. We are invited to be woke as well, not to be just walking through life as if it's all passing us by. A friend of mine looked me up this week that I hadn't seen from Ireland in a year. Now, he used to be Catholic, but he lost his mother and a brother in this last year, or a year ago, and he says, you know, what I want to do now that I'm heading to 60 is just to breathe in and be alive to every single moment. And I thought it was very powerful afterwards, because the next morning then I was, my ex-boss, her husband was dying, and she called me because I've taken him out a few times. He had a stroke. He was in his early 70s. And we went out and talked, and we're a little crazy, didn't understand one another, you know, just a difficult moment. But we had a lot of fun. Then we went to Fenton's for ice cream, and we hung out, and he spilled it all over himself. And then I brought him home, and we did that a couple of times. But the other day, I was there. There's no faith in the way I understand it. So for me and my Christianity, even as a priest, I want to do all of the things that we do as Catholics. There's something very, it's God wrapping his arms around us. You know, it's love. And I couldn't do that because they weren't Catholic, and they were a long time ago Lutheran or something. So I ended up I thought, I can't go without saying at least the Lord's Prayer. So with the carer and my good friend, because it looked like it was near 1 minute to 12, I just had to say the Lord's Prayer. So we stood around the bed holding his hand. We said the Lord's Prayer. What was deafening was the fact that the other two people holding my hand didn't know the Lord's Prayer. And I said, wow. But it didn't matter. And then I said, the Lord be with you. Let us share a moment of peace, and the tears and the joy and the hugging. And I thought to myself, that's okay. And even yesterday morning when she called me and said he'd just gone, and she was there with the carer, and I went over, and I couldn't do the prayers again because it was too much. But what I could do, sitting holding his hand, his warm hand, was say my prayers and be confident in my God had taken this soul, this good life with this good wife, home to God, and I could just be present in it. I didn't have to articulate my prayers on the outside. So I think there's a silent yes in the ordinary. I know that's not ordinary, but there's an invitation for us in all moments of our lives to celebrate that. And if you take our church community, I'm telling you right now, and I'm going to tell you over and over and over again, this idea of us doing this thing called Mass every Sunday and doing the thing over and over. I've done it for 8 years. I said it last week. I'm inviting you all to get the book From Maintenance to Mission. We are going to do something a little different here at St. Columba in the next year. We have Divine Renovation is the name, but the concept is From Maintenance to Mission. We are going to be intentional in our yes to God. We have worked it into our 5-year plan. And there are a lot of things wrong with the Catholic Church. I get it. Even listening to the readings today, doesn't the church get it that women are at the very center and birthing the reality of Christ every day in the world? Amen? Who Who was given the first invitation? A young woman. It is two women handing one part of this wonderful gift of salvation over to the other one. It is women. It's just mind-boggling that by the time the church became established, it went into patriarchy, and it went into men controlling women's bodies, and it went into women being used and abused. I think it's time that the church needs to listen to the voice of women. Amen? And we should never let go of that, and we need to continue to challenge patriarchy. We need to challenge. There is no reason that a woman couldn't stand up here and wear these clothes the same way that I can. And really, when you think about it, who better than to preach this homily today than a woman who has been pregnant and who is in a relationship? Because at the end of the day, that's who can really... My sister has birthed a lot of things in her life, but she's a nun and therefore has been able to do it. I don't want to disregard her amazing preaching or any of the other women in the church, but there's something very powerful about allowing a mother and a father to be able to preach and give that delicacy and that communication and that joy and that gift and that yes to us. And I pray for the day that that happens in our church, and I know you do too. Amen? So it is out of this eternal gift of joy, this eternal gift of saying yes. On the days in community, some days I will not be really that much up. And your faith and your joy is going to lift me. And there's days Kevin may be a little down and Carol may not be. And there'll be days when Hollis is not on her phone at Mass. And she's, I saw that. She was, look at her. Oh, looks could kill. But it's all good, Hollis. I see everything. Even in the midst of all of that, we are invited to an unqualified yes. We're called to be mature. We're called to grow up. We're called, like Theo Bowman said, to be fully functioning adults that live our faith, live our tradition, live the dream that we're called to be, and give an unqualified yes to God. Let us join Mary. Let us join her. She didn't know everything. We don't know everything. But we're invited to yes. We're invited to yes. We're invited to yes. Amen. So in that spirit of yes,